Steve Perry, the voice of Don't Stop Believin'. But behind that legendary voice lies a secret he's kept for decades. A daughter, grandkids, and a silence he's never broken until hints begin to surface. This is the story of the family Steve Perry never sings about. The voice you know, the man you don't. When Steve Perry's voice first hit the airwaves in the late 70s, it didn't just soar, it redefined rock. He wasn't just singing, he was feeling every word. Tracks like Lights, Separate Ways, and Don't Stop Believin' weren't simple songs. They were emotional lifelines. His tone carried heartbreak, hope, and something deeper that fans could never quite name. Yet behind that once-in-a-generation voice stood a man who built an invisible wall between himself and the world. While his band journey conquered stadiums, Perry kept his heart off stage. He rarely gave interviews, almost never talked about his personal life, and when questions about love or family surfaced, he'd gracefully sidestep them with a shy smile and a short answer. That mystery only grew as his fame exploded. Rock stars from his era lived loud, cars, tours, chaos. But Steve was different. He moved quietly, almost carefully, like someone protecting something precious from the noise of fame. Fans speculated endlessly. Was there a secret love? A hidden heartbreak? Some even wondered if the passion in his voice came from personal pain he never spoke about. Then, decades later, the truth slipped out, not through a headline or a tell-all book, but in the simplest way possible. Steve Perry confirmed he had a daughter. No fanfare, no details, just a quiet acknowledgement that beneath all the mystery was a father who had kept his family far from the spotlight. That one revelation changed everything. The voice millions had worshipped suddenly felt even more human. A man who'd sung about love all his life, but never shared the story of his own. And for a moment, the world saw a different Steve Perry, not the frontman commanding a crowd of 50,000 fans, but a man protecting the only thing fame could never touch, his family. But the question remains, who is the daughter he kept hidden? And what made him guard that secret for nearly half a century? The answers, and the quiet love story behind them, would reveal more about Steve Perry than any song ever could. The daughter, hidden in plain sight. When Steve Perry finally admitted he had a daughter, the revelation hit fans like a whispered confession, one that raised more questions than it answered. Who was she? Where had she been all these years? And why had one of the most recognizable voices in rock guarded her existence so fiercely? For decades, the mystery of Steve Perry's daughter has hovered just outside the spotlight, always rumored, never confirmed in detail. The name Shamla, sometimes spelled Shamila or Shamilea Arnold, has floated through fan forums and old interviews for years, with many claiming she was born sometime in the late 70s, right as Perry's star was ascending with Journey. But, like everything personal in his life, Perry never confirmed or denied those details. There are no public photos, no interviews, no social media presence linking her to him. It's as if she exists in a parallel world, one where fame never touched her. Some longtime fans believe her mother was an early girlfriend from before Perry joined Journey. Others think the relationship unfolded quietly during his touring years, away from cameras and bandmates. But every story ends the same way, with Steve Perry's deliberate silence. And that silence speaks volumes. Because while most stars of his era couldn't escape tabloid headlines, Steve managed to build an invisible boundary, one so strong that even the internet age hasn't cracked it. There's a certain poetry in that. A man who gave the world everything through his voice somehow managed to keep the most personal parts of himself untouched. And maybe that's the point. Perry once said in an interview, "You can't share what's sacred, you just protect it." That single line might explain everything. His daughter wasn't a secret to be revealed, she was a life to be protected. It's likely that she grew up completely out of the public eye, away from the chaos of the industry. No red carpets, no record deals, just a normal life, far removed from the man the world knew as the Voice. But even if she stayed invisible to fans, her presence may have shaped his most emotional songs. Those quiet verses about distance, loss, and love that endures even when you can't be together. And soon, fans would learn, his family story didn't stop there. Because years later, Steve Perry would reveal something even more surprising. He's a grandfather. The Grandkids, legacy in the shadows. When Steve Perry quietly mentioned he had grandchildren, fans were stunned. It wasn't during a major interview or album promo. It was just a passing moment, almost like an afterthought. But for the millions who grew up with his music, it was everything. Because that simple word, grandchildren, turned the voice of Journey into something even more human, Grandpa Steve. Imagine that contrast. The same man who could make an arena of 50,000 people cry with one note now smiling softly somewhere, holding a grandchild who may not even realize their grandfather once ruled rock's biggest stages. It's a vision fans can't get out of their heads. The idea that the voice behind Open Arms might now sing lullabies instead of power ballads. But, as always, the details remain hidden. No names, no photos, no interviews, nothing beyond hints dropped here and there. That his daughter has kids of her own, and that Perry cherishes his role quietly, away from the glare. He's never used his family for image, never sought attention through them. In an age where celebrity families become brands, Perry chose the opposite, invisibility. And maybe that's his way of protecting innocence from the same fame that once nearly consumed him. In a 2019 interview, when asked about what really matters in life, Perry paused before answering, "Family. That's what it all comes down to." He didn't elaborate, but that single sentence carried the weight of decades. Fans have often wondered if his grandkids even know the magnitude of who he is, that their grandfather's voice defined an entire era. Maybe to them, he's just Grandpa, the quiet man who smiles when a Journey song comes on the radio, but never says much about it. There's something poetic about that. Steve Perry spent his youth chasing sound, spotlight, and perfection. But later in life, he found something quieter, a legacy that doesn't live on stage, but in the laughter of a new generation who will probably never know the chaos their grandfather escaped. Still, for all the mystery, one truth shines through. Perry's greatest encore isn't another comeback album or reunion tour. It's the life he built in silence, and the family who gets to call him something no fan ever could, Grandpa. The silent bonds. Why the secrecy? To understand Steve Perry's silence, you have to understand what fame once did to him. At the height of Journey's success, Perry wasn't just famous, he was iconic. His voice was everywhere, blasting from car radios, echoing in stadiums, celebrated on every stage. But behind the spotlight, he was struggling to breathe. The constant pressure, the endless touring, the exhaustion of being the voice, it all came with a cost. He once admitted that fame nearly broke him. He said, "The voice was always on demand, but the person behind it wasn't." Those words reveal everything. The distance between the man the world adored and the one he was trying to hold on to. So, when it comes to his daughter and grandchildren, his secrecy isn't coldness, it's protection. He knows the spotlight can consume the very thing it touches. He's seen careers destroyed, families fractured, and private lives turned into headlines. And after losing so much to fame, he refused to let history repeat itself. There's another layer too, loss. In 2012, Steve Perry suffered one of the deepest heartbreaks of his life when his girlfriend, Kelly Nash, passed away from cancer. That experience changed him forever. He called her the love of my life, and her death pulled him into years of silence and grief. It was during that time that he began to truly value what couldn't be replaced: family, love, and the few people who stood by him when the music stopped. Since then, Perry's guarded heart has made more sense. The man who once shared his soul with millions through music now shares his heart only with a select few, the ones who never asked for fame, only for him. In a world obsessed with exposure, Perry chose the rarest form of love, quiet love. No paparazzi, no interviews, no performative affection, just connection, safe and unseen. Because maybe, after decades of singing about love found and lost, he finally learned that the purest form of love isn't shouted on stage. It's whispered in private, where no one can take it away. And yet, there would come a moment when the wall cracked just enough for fans to glimpse what he'd been hiding all along. When he let the wall down. For decades, Steve Perry kept his personal world locked away like a sacred vault. But every once in a while, a small crack appeared. Moments when his voice, his lyrics, or his interviews revealed glimpses of the man behind the mystery. The first real glimpse came in 2018, when Perry released his comeback album, Traces. It had been nearly 25 years since his last full studio record, a lifetime in music years. Fans expected an anthem, something grand and nostalgic. Instead, they got something far more intimate, an album soaked in grief, reflection, and love that endures beyond loss. Songs like Most of All, No Erasing, and You Belong to Me felt less like performances and more like letters, written to someone who might never read them, or perhaps to family he could never fully speak about. Perry called Traces his most personal work ever. "It's about the things that matter," he said softly in one interview. "Love, loss, and finding your way back." Fans noticed something different in his voice too. The power was still there, but it carried a new kind of emotion, the kind that comes from life lived and love lost. It was as if Perry had stopped singing to the world and started singing from it. In later interviews, he mentioned reconnecting with family, saying, "I'm finally allowing myself to feel joy again." He didn't elaborate, but fans connected the dots. Joy, for Perry, no longer came from fame or applause. It came from the quiet presence of people who loved him long before Journey and long after. Then, in 2024, Perry did something that surprised even longtime fans. He recorded an emotional duet with his late father, using old recordings of his dad's vocals. The song was titled No More Crying. It wasn't just a musical project. It was a generational bridge, a father and son finally sharing a song decades apart. That duet said what Perry never needed to explain. His life had come full circle. The performer who once ran from the spotlight had returned, not for fame, but to honor where he came from, and the bonds that still live quietly beyond it. Because sometimes, letting the world in isn't about revealing secrets. It's about sharing your soul in the only way you know how, through music. The real story, a man of two worlds. Steve Perry's life has always been a story of two worlds. In one, he's the untouchable icon, the man who gave rock one of its greatest voices, whose every lyric could stop time. In the other, he's just Steve, a quiet soul who spent the last decades trying to live a normal life, far from the noise that once consumed him. When you watch him now, there's a gentleness that fame can't fake. No entourage, no rehearsed answers, just a man who seems finally at peace. And maybe that's what makes his story so haunting. For years, fans begged for a comeback, but Perry wasn't chasing applause anymore. He was chasing stillness. He's the kind of artist who once lived for the stage lights, but learned to find light elsewhere, in a phone call from his daughter, a laugh from his grandkids, or an old recording of his father's voice. Those are his arenas now. And in those quiet moments, he's every bit as legendary as he was on tour. People often wonder why Steve Perry never married, why he never built a public family life like so many of his peers. But maybe the answer is simple. He's loved deeply, just privately. The same man who could make the world feel heartbreak in Faithfully or Longing in Open Arms didn't need a headline romance to prove he understood love. When you listen to him sing today, you can still hear it, that same ache that once filled stadiums. Only now, it's tempered with wisdom. It's not the cry of a rock star reaching for perfection. It's the voice of a man who's lived through loss, rediscovered joy, and learned that not every love story needs to be told out loud. Steve Perry will forever be remembered as the voice of Journey. But beyond the charts, beyond the tours, his greatest legacy might be the one he never advertised. A family built on privacy, loyalty, and love. Because when the music fades and the crowd goes silent, that's where the real story begins. In the quiet rhythm of the life he kept for himself. So yes, behind the voice that defined a generation is a man who chose silence over spectacle and love over legacy. Steve Perry's daughter, his grandkids, his quiet life. They're proof that some of the greatest stories are the ones never told. Because maybe the truest measure of a legend isn't how loud the world remembers you, but how peacefully you live when the music stops. If you want more untold stories behind rock's most private legends, hit subscribe and join us here at Backstage Melody, where every icon has a hidden verse waiting to be heard.